We will be giving you instructions on how to ask questions in a few minutes, but for now, I'd like to introduce Hunter Mill District Supervisor Walter Alcorn and see if he has any opening remarks.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Really no opening remarks, just looking forward to the comments tonight and looking for feedback. I know this project has been a long time in the making, so looking forward to it moving forward.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so now we'll just go ahead and move forward to the presentation so we can get to your comments and questions as soon as we can. I'd like to introduce Negin Asgarzadeh, who's our project manager for Fairfax County DOT, and Negin will go through the presentation.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, everyone. My name is Negin Asgarzadeh. I am the project coordinator for the Soapstone Connector project. So tonight we're going to start the project. We're going to start with the project description and review the project background. Then we will provide information about the environmental assessment, or EA, and the public hearing held in August of 2017. After that, we're going to discuss the process with the Association Drive Historic District designation, and then talk about the Section 4F evaluation and Section 106 Memorandum of Agreement. Then we're going to wrap up the presentation by reviewing the content of the revised EA and discuss the next steps for the project. Finally, we will open the floor for questions and answers. So, as I just mentioned, tonight's presentation will be followed by a Q&A session. If you would like to submit a question during the presentation, please use the Q&A function to type your question for the moderator to read aloud. You can launch the Q&A by clicking on the three dots in the bottom right of the WebEx window. When typing your question, please make sure that all panelists is selected in the Ask field directly above the Q&A text box. If you're joining us by phone, we will walk you through how to ask a question via phone at the end of the presentation. Please note, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the project webpage later this week. Okay, let's get started by reviewing the project area and see where the project is located. The Soapstone Connector would be a new roadway approximately 1/2 mile long between Sunrise Valley Drive and Sunset Hills Road. The project is located just west of the Willie Reston East Metro Rail Station and would include a new crossing over the Dulles Corridor. The current roadway network in the project area includes 2 crossings of the Dulles Corridor on either side of the Willie Reston East Metro Rail Station at Reston Parkway to the west and Willie Avenue to the east. Traffic traveling within the project area, traveling to and from the Metro Rail Station, and entering and exiting the Dulles Toll Road all compete for the same road space on Willie Avenue. Now, what is the purpose and need of the project? The purpose of the project is to provide additional multimodal capacity on a new north-south alternative to mitigate congestion on Willie Avenue. The project will address the inability of Willie Avenue to accommodate current and forecasted traffic demand. It will also address the delays on Willie Avenue at the intersections with Sunset Hills Road and Sunrise Valley Drive, the lack of direct access for buses to the Willie Reston East Metro Rail Station without requiring travel on Willie Avenue, and also the lack of connectivity for pedestrians and bicyclists to the Willie Reston East Metro Rail Station from Soapstone Drive and Sunrise Valley Drive on the south and Sunset Hills Road on the north. Okay, now we will quickly review the history of the project. The 2008 Willie Avenue Reston Parkway Station Access Management Plans, initiated by Fairfax County, was tasked with considering current status and future needs in vicinity of the 2 proposed Metro Rail stations in the area. The Soapstone Connector was included in the list of recommended roadway projects. In November of 2013, the Soapstone Connector feasibility study was conducted. This study assessed engineering feasibility of a multimodal roadway that would provide connection between Sunset Hills Road and Sunrise Valley Drive. It also identified and screened 30 alternative alignments and conducted community information meetings to ensure public input on alternatives. As a result, this study identified the most promising alignment for the Soapstone connector. On May 13, 2014, the Board of Supervisors endorsed advancing from preferred alignment to preliminary design phase, including the preparation of environmental documentation. The preferred alignment that was carried forward is Alternative 1, which is shown in red in this graphic. In addition to Alternative 1, a variation of this alignment, which is shown in blue, was also developed as part of the alternative development process and also assessed in the environmental assessment. The two alternatives underwent detailed analysis in the environmental assessment. The EA was approved for public availability by the Federal Highway Administration in August of 2017. As part of the environmental process, Fairfax County held 3 public involvement events: 1 public scoping meeting in October of 2015, 1 public information meeting in June of 2016, and a public hearing for the EA held in November of 2017. Please note that the EA and associated technical reports are available on the project website, and we have included that address at the end of the presentation for you. The purpose of the public hearing that was held in November 2017 was to receive comments from the public on the alternatives and the EA, and to share information on the study process and its current status. 45 people attended the hearing. FCDOT received comments from 19 individuals or property owners, 2 federal agencies, including the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and 1 state agency. You can find the summary of the November 2017 public hearing and its comments in Appendix D or page 66 of the revised EA, which are posted online. As part of the EA process, a Phase 1A Cultural Resources Survey and Phase 1B Architectural Survey were completed. These studies indicated that the buildings within the RCAEI on Association Drive were not eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places because they are all less than 50 years old. The Virginia Department of Historic Resources, or DHR, requested the preparation of a supplemental architectural survey for the RCAEI in January of 2018. A supplemental Phase 1 architectural reconnaissance survey was completed in July of 2018, followed by a public meeting. Please note that the Phase 1 architectural survey is available on project websites. The July 2018 public meeting summary is also Appendix E or page 120 of the revised EA. The supplemental Phase 1 architectural reconnaissance survey was submitted to DHR for review and concurred. In November 2018, DHR concurred that 9 of the 10 buildings are potentially eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, or NRHP, under Criteria A and C, and in Criteria Consideration G, which is properties less than 50 years old. In October of 2019, the keeper of the National Register determined that the historic district is eligible under Criterion A, which is community planning and development, as an exceptionally important component of the overall restaurant development. The graphic on the right side of the screen shows the impacts to the Association Drive Historic District. The inset with the red circle shows the proposed right-of-way impact to the 1904 Association Drive parcel, which is about 0.96 acres. The building would also be impacted. As the historic property was determined to be impacted, the process of Section 4F of the U.S. DOT Act was initiated. Section 4F of the U.S. Department of Transportation Act of 1966 stipulates that FHW cannot approve the use of land from any significant historic site unless it is demonstrated that there is no feasible and prudent avoidance alternative to the use of land from the property. FHWA may approve only the alternative that causes the least overall harm in light of Section 4F's preservation purpose. As part of the Section 4F analysis, Fairfax County revisited alternatives 5C and 6E from the 30 alignments that were screened in the 2013 feasibility study. Neither was determined to be a feasible and prudent avoidance alternative to the use of land from the Section 4F property, and they were both dropped from consideration. The Section 4F evaluation identified some main reasons as to why these two alternatives were not advanced. For both alternatives 5C and 6E, there will be additional construction, maintenance, or operational costs. There will be some operational problems as well as safety concerns for drivers, bicyclists, and pedestrians due to substandard spacing between adjacent intersections. Alternative 5C will also have social, economic, or environmental impacts, such as relocation of 15 tenants at 11600 Sunrise Valley Drive, and Alternative 6E will have potential constructability issues due to the unknown suitability of the soil under the pond to support the roadway structures. The draft Section 4F evaluation was completed in October 2020. After careful review, FHWA determined that there is no prudent and feasible alternative to the use of the Association Drive Historic District and concluded that alternatives 1 and 2 are the alternatives that cause the least overall harm to the Association Drive Historic District. Please note that the draft Section 4F evaluation is Appendix B, or page 8 of the revised EA. Pursuant to Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, or NHPA, Fairfax County initiated a process to identify consulting parties on this project. As you may know, consulting parties may be identified as those agencies, tribes, organizations, or certain individuals with a demonstrated legal, economic, or historic preservation interest in an undertaking. Section 106 of the NHPA requires identification and assessment of the effects federal actions may have on historic properties. On February 24, 2021, DHR determined that the Soapstone Connector project would have an adverse effect on historic properties. Between July of 2018 and March of 2021, 4 consulting party meetings were held. A draft Memorandum of Agreement, or MOA, has been developed to resolve the adverse effects under Section 106 of the NHPA. In the draft Section 106 Memorandum of Agreement, mitigation measures are identified as discrete stipulations in the MOA. The MOA is a legally binding document, and signatories have sole authority to execute, amend, or terminate the MOA. Signatories to the MOA are the Federal Highway Administration, or FHWA, the Virginia Department of Transportation, or VDOT, the Virginia Department of Historic Resources, or DHR, and the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. The draft Section 106 MOA is Appendix C, or page 36 of the revised EA, and is posted online. In consultation with the signatories and consulting parties, 4 stipulations were identified to mitigate the adverse effects of the project on the historic district. These 4 stipulations are: 1, Historic American Building Survey, or HABS, recordation of Association Drive Historic District. 2 is Historic American Landscape Survey, or HALS, documentation of Association Drive Historic District. Please note that the HABS and HALS are part of the National Park Service Heritage Documentation Program that documents achievements in architecture, engineering, and landscape design in the United States. HABS focuses on the buildings, and HALS focuses on the landscape and setting of the historic district. Both HABS and HALS include written history and description, photographs, and drawings. Documentation to be filed at the Library of Congress and DHR, with copies available for review at several locations in the local area, including the Reston Regional Library. The third stipulation that was identified is preparing and installing 3 wayside markers for Association Drive Historic District. And the last one is preparation of a public history or popular report that will meaningfully convey the importance of the Association Drive Historic District as originally conceived and developed within the Reston Plant community. Some additional contents that are included in the revised EA are summaries of the November 2017 public hearing and the July 2018 public information meeting, updates to the environmental analysis, and discussion of changes in the area since the EA was released in August 2017. Updated cultural resources information and impact analysis, alternative analysis and draft Section 4F evaluation, and documentation of Section 106 coordination and presentation of the draft Section 106 MOA. Again, all this information is on the project website and available to view. So in terms of next steps, the Board of Supervisors need to make a decision on the preferred alternative. Then the signatories will execute, that is, sign the Section 106 MOA, and the Federal Highway Administration will sign the final Section 4F evaluation and issue the NHPA decision. If a finding of no significant impact is issued, the county will coordinate with VDOT to start design. Stipulations in the signed MOA will be implemented prior to any construction activities. And in terms of funding, the project is funded in part by the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, or NVTA, and in total, NVTA has approved $88.8 million for design, right-of-way, and construction of Soapstone project. We have now come to the end of the presentation, and with that, I would like to turn it back to Michael, who will lead us through tonight's questions and answers.
Thank you, Negin. So we would like to move on to, like Negin said, the question and answer part of our presentation. And here we show information on how you can ask questions. Use the Q&A feature. Again, that's in the bottom right of the WebEx dialog box. If you do not see it, please click on the 3 dots in the bottom right, and then type in your question. And again, please make sure that all panelists are selected when you type in your question. If you are calling in via telephone, please press *3 to raise your hand, and then you'll be added to the queue, and then I can call on you and unmute you when your turn is up. So again, if you're calling, press *3 to raise your hand, and then I will call on you and unmute you so you can ask your question. And then type questions in the Q&A box. Make sure all panelists are selected. And finally, I will note there is, as I understand, there's a 7:30 meeting that some people attending this meeting may want to attend. So I'd ask, if you are not going to that 7:30 meeting, if you just maybe pause a couple minutes and let those who do have to leave at 7:30 ask their questions first. Up here we have information on how to provide feedback after the meeting, and I will go through that at the end, but you can see it here, and we'll be accepting comments through August 1st. And then finally, I'd like to introduce a panel of folks we have here to help us answer questions. We have Doug Miller, who's the Fairfax County Department of Transportation's Environmental Program Manager. We have Eric Titleman, who's Chief of the Capital Projects and Traffic Engineering Division, also with Fairfax County Department of Transportation. With our consultant firm Parsons, we have Serby Ashton, who's a Senior Environmental Planner, and Susan Bupp, who's the Senior Cultural Resources Specialist. And finally, we have Tom Bashadny here, who's Director of the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. So with that, we do have some people typing in questions, so I will start reading them so we can start having the panel answer your questions. The first question is, do we have an ETA on when, if all went forward, this would be built?
I think I can answer this question. So as I explained in the presentation, if FHWA issued the finding of no impact and then we get VDOT the green light, we are hoping that we can start the construction as soon as 2027. But it really depends on all the actions that need to be taken before we can give the go-ahead to VDOT.
Thank you, Nadine. And VDOT will be developing a final schedule once they get their design consultant on board. Can provide more details to the schedule. Okay, the second question is, does VDOT think 88.8 is adequate since the cost estimate was prepared? I'll note real quick, the 88.8, I believe, was the NVTA funding share that we were just noting. The overall project estimate is higher. Nadine, do you have any details on that?
Yes, so the project is currently estimated to cost $237 million. And this 88.8 is just a start point for us to get us to the design and hopefully the preliminary engineering phase.
Thank you. Our next question, when will the final alignment be determined? Is there flexibility in the ultimate design? And maybe someone on the panel could speak to that in terms of the NHPA document and what that means moving forward into design.
Yes, so what we studied in the environmental documentation were 200-foot wide corridors. The typical section of the roadway would require about half of that. It would have a one lane in each direction, and then one two-way left turn only lane. So that'd be 3 travel lanes. It would have a bike lane on both sides of the road, a shared use path on one side, and a concrete sidewalk on the other. So that's about 100 feet, which would fit within that 200-foot wide corridor. So the alignment, we picked a 200-foot wide corridor to give us a little wiggle room during design, but the general alignment would follow that 200-foot wide corridor. Should during the design process we go outside of that 200-foot wide corridor, then we would conduct an environmental reevaluation. But the general alignment is set by what you see in the environmental documentation.
Great, thank you, Serby. All right, next question. Is there any way to move the money for this project? Sorry, I was getting some feedback. Hold on one second. Tom, did you want to say something?
Go ahead and read the question. I'm happy to help answer.
Okay. Is there any way to move the money for this project over to the more needed underpass crossover at Holly Drive? Needs have changed since 2013. Is that the question you wanted to provide feedback on, Tom?
So the answer is unfortunately no. That we have to apply very specifically for individual projects, and they're scored based on the merits of their project. If we would choose not to move forward with a particular project, in this case Soapstone, then the money would be returned to NVTA and then it would be reallocated. So there would be no guarantee that the money would end up on any other particular project in Fairfax County, it might end up in a different jurisdiction. So if we choose not to use the money for the designated project, then it goes back into the pot.
Thank you. All right, next question. Are there any photos or renderings of suggested road?
I can answer that. So at this point, like I mentioned, the roadway typical section is as I just described, and the bridge typical section would have 2 travel lanes in each direction with the same, bike lane on both sides of the road and shared use path and concrete sidewalk. The only thing we have in terms of showing that are typical sections in the environmental document in the alternatives chapter, but we don't have any photos or renderings in end to end or showing the roadway as it would be. More information about that would come during the design phase.
Thank you. Next question. Are any association buildings destroyed given the preferred routing?
Currently, both Alternative 1 and Alternative 2 would impact 1904 Association Drive, which is the National Association of Secondary School Principal Building, which is one of the contributing elements to the Association Drive Historic District.
Thank you. All right, next question. Is the connector subject to Reston Association comp plan guidelines? I'll chime in really quickly. I know in the past we had projects, if they're in, say, state right away, Reston Association guidelines do not apply. However, we, in spirit of, of what the community wants to see, we have always tried to meet Reston Association comp plan guidelines. I will say I'm not extremely familiar how those would apply to this roadway, so that might be something we need to do a little bit more research on. Does anyone else on the panel have anything else to add for that?
No.
Thanks. Okay, next question. Can someone speak to the roadway configuration? I'm a bicyclist that works in the area, and 5-foot bike lanes without buffers next to travel lanes seems less than ideal. Can we improve these before construction?
So I'll admit the typical sections you see in the EA were developed originally in the 2013 feasibility study and then carried forward into the EA. I assume during the preliminary design phase that there will certainly be flexibility. The bike lane would be developed to meet standards, and you would also have opportunities to provide input during the design phase of the project.
Right, and we can do that within the 200-foot footprint that we have in the
Absolutely.
EA.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Next question. When is the anticipated time frame for the Board of Supervisors to make a decision on the preferred alternative? So let me take a quick stab and ask the panel to help out. I know we do need board endorsement of the preferred alignment. And then there are some signatories that need to happen or signatures that need to happen. And I believe we need to go back to the board again a second time.
Yeah, I think in this case, Michael, if I recall, we actually went to the board and because there's been additional revaluation, we may need to go back and ask the board just again to endorse a preferred alignment. Tom, do you recall? It's been a few years since we took it to the board.
Yeah, the board has already endorsed the alignment. We will need them to endorse the MOA related to the environmental document.
Right.
So we will be taking that back to the board after the end of the comment period closes for the comment period on the MOA. So it'd be probably this fall that we'll be taking that back to
The board will need to pick
There is
either alternative.
There's
one
option
or
1 and
alternative
2, and they haven't picked between option 1 and 2 yet. Is that so? We will need to bring that back to the board, is my recollection.
Correct. the board will have to decide on a preferred alternative, either alternative 1 or alternative 2. And then that will be inserted in the final section 4F evaluation as well.
Yeah, right.
And then FHWA will also be able to make a decision. So the board will be the first to have to make a decision on whether preferred alternative will be alternative 1 or 2.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for reminding me.
Yep.
And I think if all goes well, we would hope to do that this fall to get the first action to the board if we can. Okay, next question. Along Sunrise Valley, we are trying to create a bike lane that is buffered from the road by a set of trees and also separated from the sidewalk and pedestrians by a set of trees. Is it possible to get that type of multimodal functionality on this connector project? I'll sort of reiterate what Serby said. There's room to look at that and update the bike ped facilities as we get into design. And so we will be working with VDOT as well as with our active transportation team here at the county on the best facilities and what we can get in. Realizing, of course, we do have this footprint we need to stay within. So that's a very good comment. That is something that we can look toward to when we get into actual design. And for the panelists, we did get a thank you from one of our attendees asking questions. That is all the questions that have been typed in right now. I do not see anyone who has called in who wants to ask the question yet. So just a reminder, you can type your questions in the Q&A box. If you're calling in, please press *3. I'll now take this time just to go over instructions verbally on how you can send in comments after the meeting. So if you want to submit comments online, please visit the project webpage and use the red feedback form. It's at the bottom of the page. The project webpage for this project is www.fairfaxcounty.gov/transportation//soapstone-connector. You can also call by phone. Please call us at 703-877-5600 and just reference you're calling about the Soapstone connector, or by mail at the Fairfax County Department of Transportation, Soapstone Connector Project, 4050 Legato Road, Suite 400, Fairfax, Virginia, 22033. And again, we will be accepting comments through August 1st. I'll just give another minute, see if anyone else has another question. Again, press *3 if you're on the phone to raise your hand. And again, just a quick reminder, all the documents we've talked about and Negin discussed are on our project webpage at www.fairfaxcounty.gov/projects/soapstone-connector. So we got another question. The question is, so the community could ask to cancel the project? I'll just go ahead and take that. So certainly a comment could be that you don't think we should move forward with the project. And I do encourage you to submit that formally. We do have it as part of the record here, but you could submit it as well through these 3 sources I've mentioned. And again, part of the reason for meeting tonight is to get your feedback, which is very important. We'll be using your feedback to help us, the Department of Transportation, help guide our formal recommendation to the board, and then the board will be using your feedback as well to help inform their decision. We will be creating a comment and meeting summary that we will post on the project webpage as well after this meeting. In addition, the recording of this meeting will be posted on the project webpage along with the presentation, probably within the next couple of days. We do have another comment. saying we absolutely need an alternative to Wheelie Crossing. So thank you for that comment. Okay, I don't see any more questions, and no one of the folks who've called in, no one has raised their hand. So with that, again, I'd like to thank you very much for your time tonight, and we will end the meeting. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
All right, thank you all.